If you have ADHD, silence is not actually silent. Silence is suspicious. Silence is when your brain decides it has waited long enough and finally opens every mental file it has been quietly collecting all day. People talk about peace and quiet like it is a reward you earn after being productive, like a calming bonus round in life. For you, quiet is when the internal speakers turn all the way up and the playlist jumps randomly between unfinished tasks, intrusive memories, imaginary conversations, and a song lyric you do not even like but somehow know by heart. You are not relaxing. You are hosting an unpaid conference inside your own head. Before we go any further, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And while you are listening, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. If your brain has ever felt like it was running too many tabs at once and none of them would close, you are very much in the right place. The endless noise inside an ADHD brain is not a metaphor, and it is not exaggeration. It is not overthinking, in the casual way people say when they mean they briefly worried about something. This noise exists because attention, inhibition, and regulation work differently. Most people have a mental filter running quietly in the background. It decides what matters, what can wait, and what can fade out. It keeps their internal world organized and relatively calm without them having to think about it. An ADHD brain does not have that filter. It lets everything in. Thoughts arrive without warning. Ideas interrupt each other. Memories show up uninvited. Sensory input stacks up. You can be thinking about what you need to do today when suddenly you are also replaying a conversation from years ago, remembering something embarrassing, wondering how escalators actually work, thinking about whether you replied too fast to a message, and humming part of a song that exists only to haunt you. None of this is planned. None of it is useful. It simply happens. This is why just focus is such an impressively useless suggestion. Focus on what exactly? Which thought? Which sound? Which sensation? Your brain is not empty or wandering. It is overcrowded. Asking someone with ADHD to just focus without support is like asking someone in a packed stadium to hear one whisper over thousands of shouting voices. It is technically possible, but it is also wildly unrealistic. The noise is not always chaotic in an obvious way. Sometimes it is a low, constant hum that never shuts off. A background commentary that follows you everywhere, even when you are tired, even when you are resting. Even when you desperately want quiet, your brain keeps narrating, planning, remembering, analyzing, and replaying because it does not know how to stop. Bedtime is often the worst. Your body is exhausted, you lie down, the lights go out, and your brain decides this is the perfect moment to review your entire life in high definition. Regrets appear. Ideas suddenly feel urgent. You remember things you were supposed to do. You replay awkward moments with full emotional sound effects. The quieter the room becomes, the louder your thoughts get. People suggest meditation, which is honestly funny. Meditation instructions usually begin with notice your thoughts and let them pass. ADHD brains notice every thought. They do not pass. They bring friends. You sit there trying to breathe calmly while your mind performs mental gymnastics, and then you open your eyes convinced you failed. You did not fail. You simply discovered how loud your internal world already is. This noise is exhausting, and the exhaustion is invisible. From the outside, you may look calm or still. Internally, you are constantly processing, redirecting, filtering, and negotiating with your own thoughts. Mental noise costs energy. A lot of it. You can spend an entire day doing nothing and still feel completely drained because your brain never stopped running. This is one reason ADHD is so often mistaken for laziness. People see a still body and assume a still mind. They do not see the constant mental sprint. You are not resting, you are buffering. The noise also affects emotions. Thoughts are not neutral. They carry tone, memory, and feeling. One small criticism can echo for days. An awkward moment can resurface randomly with the same intensity it had the first time. This is not being dramatic. It is difficulty regulating emotional input. Your brain stores the entire experience and replays it whenever it feels bored. ADHD brains struggle to turn the volume down. Feelings arrive loud. Thoughts arrive fast. Everything feels urgent, even when it is not. And when everything feels urgent, nothing feels manageable. This is also why distractions feel comforting. External noise can quiet internal noise. Music, podcasts, videos, background sound give your brain something structured to hold on to. People sometimes call this stimulation seeking, but very often it is regulation. Silence is not calming when your brain does not know how to be quiet, so you play music while working, you put on a familiar show while cleaning, you scroll while waiting. Not because you cannot handle quiet, but because quiet is not actually quiet for you. The noise also makes starting tasks difficult. Beginning anything means pushing through a wall of thoughts. How long it will take, where to begin, what could go wrong, what else you are forgetting. That mental crowd makes initiation feel heavy. So you delay, and people assume you do not care. In reality, you care deeply, and your brain is simply too loud to move easily, and that is where we will pause. Then your brain does something else entirely. It hyper-focuses. Not on the thing you were supposed to do, of course, on something easier, something more interesting, something that provides immediate reward. You sit down to answer one email and somehow spend an hour reorganizing a drawer you have never opened before, or researching a completely unrelated topic that you did not know existed until 5 minutes ago, but are now emotionally invested in. It looks like avoidance from the outside. From the inside, it feels like your brain finally found something it can breathe with. This is the part people do not understand. ADHD is not a lack of focus. It is an inability to regulate focus. You do not choose what grabs you. Your brain does. And when it locks on hard. Time disappears. Hunger disappears. The rest of the world fades out. You are not being productive or unproductive on purpose. You are following wherever your brain found dopamine. This is also why decision-making becomes exhausting. Even small decisions feel heavy. What should you eat? Which task comes first? When should you start? Your brain presents every option simultaneously, complete with commentary, side notes, emotional weight, and unrelated reminders. There is no ranking system. Everything shows up at once like a pop-up window demanding attention. Decision paralysis sets in, not because you do not care, but because your brain refuses to simplify. People often confuse this internal chaos with anxiety. And sometimes anxiety does show up, especially after years of being misunderstood. But the noise itself is not always anxious. Sometimes it is neutral. Sometimes it is curious. Sometimes it is creative. Many people with ADHD have rich inner worlds, constant ideas, unexpected connections, humor that comes from seeing patterns other people miss. You can jump between concepts and land somewhere original. That ability to connect unrelated things is a strength. The problem is not having thoughts. The problem is not having a volume knob. This is why people often describe ADHD medication in emotional terms rather than dramatic ones. Not because it changes who they are, but because it lowers the noise enough to breathe. Thoughts stop colliding, they line up. Focus becomes possible without force. Silence finally feels like silence instead of a threat. And for many people, that moment brings relief and grief at the same time, because you suddenly realize how loud it always was, and how hard you worked just to appear fine. Before that understanding, you blame yourself. You assume you are scattered, undisciplined, weak, or simply not trying hard enough. You do not realize you have been navigating a mental environment that never shuts up. You have been working twice as hard just to seem half as calm. You were never lazy. You were overloaded. And then there is rest. Rest should be simple. Sit down, relax, recharge. But with ADHD, rest can feel like a trap. The moment you stop moving, your brain starts listing everything you should be doing, or everything you forgot, or everything that might go wrong later. Even when you want to rest, your mind negotiates your worth. Like rest is something you have to earn through productivity, so you end up exhausted and guilty at the same time, which is an impressively inefficient combination. That is why many people with ADHD rest with stimulation, familiar shows, music, low-effort activities that occupy just enough attention to quiet the chaos. That is not failing to rest. That is regulation. You are building a stable soundscape in a brain that refuses to lower the volume on its own. Once you understand the noise, something important shifts. The shame starts to loosen. You stop asking, "Why can't I just be calm?" and start asking, "What helps my brain regulate?" You stop forcing silence and start working with structure, external organization, writing thoughts down so they stop bouncing around your head. Visual reminders, timers, flexible routines that help instead of punish. You also become kinder to yourself on loud days, because loud days are real. Some days your brain feels like a crowded train during rush hour. Other days it is quieter, and you can think in complete sentences. That inconsistency is part of ADHD. Shame assumes you are choosing the noise. You are not choosing it, you are managing it. And then there are those rare moments when your brain suddenly goes quiet, not empty, just calm. And it feels almost suspicious. Like, wait, is this what other people experience regularly? And that is when you realize you have been living in hard mode. Not worse, not weaker, just louder. If this story feels familiar, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming. And in the comments, tell us where you are watching from, and whether your brain ever feels loud, even when everything around you is quiet. If you have ever felt relieved just hearing someone describe what your mind sounds like, you are not alone. Here's the truth. ADHD is not just about attention. It is about regulation. The noise inside your head is not a personality flaw. It is not a lack of discipline. It is not you being dramatic. It is a brain that notices everything and struggles to turn the volume down. Once you understand that, you stop fighting yourself like you are the problem. You start building a life that works with your brain instead of constantly pushing against it. And that changes everything.